Prop 25 ends our right to put up bail for anyone, even though they may have been racially profiled. Prop 25 replaces bail with computer algorithms. Academic studies show that these algorithms are biased. Some call them black boxes. And Prop 25's new bureaucracy delays justice for innocent people stuck in jail. The NAACP asks you to vote no on Proposition 25.
Attention, liberal snowflakes. Caught you listening again.
Well, you happen to have caught me in a moment of self-pleasure.
Stewie and Richie. The Patriotically Correct Radio Show is on the Warrior Radio Network.
Will you shut up, man?
Listen, China ate your lunch, Joe.
You're the worst president America has ever had.
Hey,
Come
Joe,
on. I'm not here to call out his lies. Everybody knows he's a liar.
But you
I just want to make sure.
Joe, you're the liar.
I want to make sure.
Graduated last in your class, not first in your class.
I want to make
Mr.
sure.
Mr. President, can you let him finish, sir?
No, he doesn't know how to do that.
You know what?
Absolutely not true.
You're doing it.
You're going to
Not
have
true.
Gentlemen. I hate to raise my voice, but I see it seems to be, why shouldn't I be different than the two of you?
Elections have consequences. We have the Senate, we have the White House, and we have a phenomenal nominee, respected by all.
The American people have a right to have a say in who the Supreme Court nominee is. And that say occurs when they vote for United States senators and when they vote for the President of the United States. They're not going to get that chance now because we're in the middle of an election already. Or he just looked at the stock market. One of the two, because guess what? A lot of people died. And a lot more are going to die unless he gets a lot smarter.
If we would have listened to you, the country would have been left wide open. Millions of people would have died, not 200,000, and one person is too much. It's China's fault. It should have never happened. They stopped it from going in, but it was China's fault. This guy will close down the whole country and destroy our country. Our country is coming back incredibly well, setting records as it does it. We don't need somebody to come in and say, let's shut it down.
We handed him a booming economy. He blew it. We have a higher deficit with China now than we did before. We have the highest trade deficit
China
with
ate
Mexico.
your lunch, down
All right, gentlemen,
18%. China ate your lunch, Joe. And no wonder your son goes in and he takes out billions of dollars, to manage. He makes millions of dollars. And also,
Simply
while we're
not
at it,
true.
why is it, just out of curiosity, the mayor of Moscow's wife gave your son $3.5 million? What did he do to deserve it?
Welcome into a special edition of the Patriotically Correct Radio Show. PC Radio brought to you today by Johnson Jewelers, and Adjust Today Chiropractic, as well as the USCCA. Make sure to get over to the USCCA's website. They're giving away a $27,000 trip to Las Vegas if you use the promo code Mojo50. Welcome to our Mojo50 radio listeners on iHeartRadio. Nearly 1 million of you tune in to this low-budget afternoon radio program every single weekday, Monday through Friday from 4 p.m. until 5 p.m. Central Time, and we thank you for being here. Also, make sure that you download the OpsLens app. In the second half today, we're going to talk to Lindsay Ferris-Martin. Lindsay Ferris-Martin is a social media expert, and she's going to talk to us about tomorrow, Rich. Tomorrow, the new community standards roll out for Facebook. Ooh, it's going to be... Are we going to be gone? Yep, we're done. The censoring has already begun. About 3 weeks ago, and we've talked about this on our show, about 3 weeks ago, Facebook made it so that you can only share messages with up to 5 people in your contact list at one time. So they're not limiting your ability to talk or opine on certain things. They're just limiting the amount of people that you can share that with. It's my prediction, and I could be totally wrong. This is the conspiracy theorist in me. I could be completely, totally off my rocker here. But my prediction is that if you say anything that is pro-Trump or anti-Biden, that you will be banned from Facebook. Twitter will be shortly to follow thereafter, and then, of course, Instagram, and Google is already on board. You can't even, if you Google anything Trump right now, you're going to get a negative Trump result and a positive Biden result. So, for example, if you look for Trump policy regarding Planned Parenthood, you're going to get all of this pro-Planned Parenthood, pro-abortion, women's choice, the right to choose, the Me Too, and all that crap. Richard, the debates were last night. You and I were out working. We listened to it a little bit as we were, chasing a guy that was wanted for felony burglary. We ended up catching up with him. That was a great job. And while we were in and out of the truck, it sounded very heated. And so we have some highlights here. We just showed you at the beginning of our show. But now we want to get right into the questions questions that were asked. And the first question out of the gate, Chris Wallace from the Fox News Channel asked Trump about his nomination of ACB Amy Coney Barrett to take over that vacated Supreme Court justice seat from the late Bader Ginsburg.
I will tell you very simply, we won the election. Elections have consequences. We have the Senate, we have the White House, and we have a phenomenal nominee, good in every way, good in every way. In fact, some of her biggest endorsers are very liberal people. We have plenty of time, even if we did it after the election itself. I have a lot of time after the election, as you know. And we won the election, and therefore we have the right to choose her, and very few people knowingly would say otherwise. And by the way, the Democrats, they wouldn't even think about not doing it. If they had, the only difference is they'd try and do it faster. There's no way they would give it up. They had Merrick Garland, but the problem is they didn't have the election, so they were stopped. And probably that would happen in reverse also. Definitely would happen in reverse.
Yeah, I totally agree with him.
Wow.
If the Democrats right now were in office and Ruth Bader Ginsburg had died, we know already what they would do. I mean, this would be a rush to nominate, and they're already talking about packing the court. By the way, I don't know if we're going to get into that. I don't remember if it's in one of our clips or not. But at one point, Biden was asked by Chris Wallace and by the president if he would pack the court. In other words, if he would change it from a 9-member Supreme Court to a 16-member Supreme Court, basically thereby making the Supreme Court, the highest court in the land, a mini Congress. And he refused to answer the question. He actually said, I'm not going to answer that question. So then basically we know the answer. I've heard speculation also last night that Biden was wired. That you look on Twitter today and all the conservatives are saying that he was wired. And then you look at all the liberals and they're saying completely impossible, could never happen. But yet he refused to comply or go along with the request of the Trump administration to be checked by a third party bilaterally for electronic monitoring devices. So, he didn't speak as if he were wired, because if he were wired, whoever is talking in his ear is a blubbering idiot as well. He didn't come off. He definitely got very flustered at different points in this debate. We're going to go now to Biden's response to Trump on ACB's nomination.
The American people have a right to have a say in who the Supreme Court nominee is, and that say occurs when they vote for United States senators and when they vote for the President of the United States. They're not going to get that chance now because we're in the middle of an election already. The election has already started. Tens of thousands of people have already voted. And so the thing that should happen is we should wait. We should wait and see what the outcome of this election is. And the justice, and I'm not opposed to the justice. She seems like a very fine person.
Great.
And there's 100 million people who have pre-existing conditions.
What?
And they'll be taken away as well.
Okay. So
wow.
He clearly admitted that he doesn't have a problem with Amy Coney Barrett. He doesn't have a problem with that justice. He talked about how 100 million people have pre-existing conditions. That's a third of the country. We'll get into that. We're going to fact check that here in just a minute. A third of the country, Richard, has pre-existing conditions. The point that I want to talk about here is this. He said that the people should decide who is the next Supreme Court justice. But in the Constitution, does it say the people shall decide who is the next Supreme Court justice?
Well, no, of course not. And since when does anybody get to tell the president what they're going to do? The
people are supposed to be able to, not
right,
tell him what to do, but they elect him based on what he told us he was going to do.
Yeah, but another nominee doesn't get to tell the president what to do. The Senate doesn't necessarily get to tell the president what to do. We tell our representatives what we want, and that's what they're supposed to go forth and try to get accomplished. Not telling him what to do to further their own agenda. That's bullshit.
So what I'm saying is he said that the people should decide who is the next SCOTUS nominee. The people should decide who's going to fill RBG's seat. But that's not how this works. The Constitution clearly says that the president shall nominate Supreme Court justices to the highest court in the land, and the Senate will confirm. We have a Republican Senate. We voted for that Republican Senate. The people did speak. So to wait for an election would not be the people speaking. The people spoke based on the fact that they know They knew, and one of the most important topics, one of the most important talking points in the 2016 election was that we knew there were going to be 1, 2, or maybe 3 or 4 vacated Supreme Court justice seats. Trump promised. He promised me, he promised you, he promised everybody in this country, whether you're a Republican or a Democrat, he made promises to you what he was going to do as your president. And all of you snowflakes and everybody out there, Trump's not my president, Trump's not my... Fact check. Yes, he is. He is the president of the United States. And he's not there for 3 years. He's not there for 3 years and 331 days. He is there for 4 years. Okay? And his 4 years are not done yet. There is a vacated Supreme Court justice seat. It is his job to fill it. Here's Trump responding to Biden on the ACB nomination.
There aren't 100 million people with pre-existing conditions. As far as the say is concerned, the people already had their say. Okay, Justice Ginsburg said very powerfully, very strongly, at some point, 10 years ago or so, she said a president and the Senate is elected for a period of time, but a president's elected for 4 years. We're not elected for 3 years. I'm not elected for 3 years. Mm-hmm. So we have the Senate, we have a president.
He's elected to the next
during
election.
that period of time, we have an opening. I'm not elected for 3 years. I'm elected for 4 years. And the 100 million people, Joe, the 100 million people is totally wrong. I don't know where you got that number. The bigger problem that you have is that you're going to extinguish 180 million people with their private health care that they're very
That's
happy with.
That's simply not true.
Well, you're certainly going to socialist. You're going to socialist medicine.
We're now into...
Okay, so then there was an argument about him, going socialist. Go ahead, Richard.
So I just did a little bit of fact checking on my own. It's a very rough number, but there's roughly 328.2 million people in this country. Mm-hmm. And so you'd be right by saying a third of the people would be 100 million people.
Roughly.
And so that's a really skewed number, I think. But I will agree that everybody in this country has one pre-existing condition, and it's our goddamn government.
That's right. Yes, absolutely. My pre-existing condition is Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and her hesitation to get into the porn market. I'd really like to see some, let's just go ahead and get this little political facade out of the way, because we all know that she was a plant. She was, do you remember who Lou Pearlman is? Lou Pearlman is the guy who created NSYNC and Backstreet Boys, Britney Spears. They were created. Okay, Britney Spears didn't know how to sing. She was a young blonde with nice looking boobs and a tight butt, and she could shake her shit. And so we're going to teach her how to sing. And if not, then we'll use auto-tune, T-Pain. Okay, and then we'll put her on stage and we'll have her get a bunch of background dancers. Okay, we'll do really big productions with fireworks and all kinds of stuff. She'll sell out her shows. The merchandising will be crazy. And we all know that that's where they make their money. T-shirts, dolls, banners, posters. What else can you think of? Cups, mugs, hats, bobbleheads. This is where they make their money. Okay, it's not, and concert sales. It's really not on the album. Nobody makes money on the sale of an album in the music industry. The sale of the album is designed for the label to recuperate their investment. Okay? So Lou Pearlman creates Britney Spears and the Backstreet Boys. I think he had a hand in NSYNC. I'm not really sure. That might be wrong. Actually, I think it was Dick Scott that had NSYNC, and that could be wrong as well. 4-letter word, Backstreet Boys. What was the other one? New Kids on the Block. These guys were all manufactured. That's what's happening in Washington right now. These are manufactured personalities, if you will, right down to the way that they look, the way that they dress, the way that they talk. Listen to Barack Obama when he goes and talks at a historically predominantly black college. He puts on the whole dialect. He really changes the way that he talks. Listen to the way that Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez talks when she's in Brooklyn versus when she's in Texas talking, or when she's in Chicago talking. When she's in Brooklyn, she's Brooklyn. She really brings out the Brooklyn girl. Hey.
Forget about it.
Forget about it. And she's really radicalized. And this is what this is designed to do, in my opinion. We know that she's manufactured. We know that she's a plant, just like Obama was, just like Biden is. Biden doesn't know really what to say here. He hasn't known what to say since his candidacy began. He hasn't known what to say since he very marginally defeated Bernie Sanders for the nomination. Mm-hmm. You know why he doesn't know what to say? Because the best campaign for Joe Biden is to have no campaign at all. He doesn't stand for anything because he's nothing. He's an empty suit. He's a shell. He is a puppet being controlled by his handlers. And it's been made so apparent and so obvious. But of course, there's a mainstream media blackout on that. And all they do, and the president was right last night at one point when he said, you know what? I'm up against the media. I'm up against you and I'm up against the media. And the media doesn't give me any bad coverage. They give you great coverage, but they give me terrible coverage. And they have ever since he and the first lady came down the escalator.
Yes. Absolutely.
They got into a heated discussion about corruption last night, and we've been talking about Burisma and Hunter Biden being aboard Air Force Two, the people's plane, the taxpayers' plane, Air Force Two. And so just for those of you that don't know this, there are several planes that say the United States of America on the side of them. I think there are 2 or 3 of the big 747 400s or 800s or whatever they are. And then there's a couple of 757s. If the president is aboard any one of those planes, its call sign is Air Force One. So it doesn't matter if he gets aboard a Cessna being flown out of the St. Paul Holman Field Airport, that would be Air Force One. The president is aboard, that's Air Force One. If the vice president is aboard, it is Air Force Two. So the vice president may very well fly in the same helicopter that's flown by the Marine Corps from the White House to, say, Joint Andrews Base, right? That would be Marine 2 if the vice president were aboard it. But if the president, it would be Marine 1. So the aircraft itself doesn't really make a difference. Here's what I'm saying. The vice president, the former vice president's son, Joe Biden's son, Hunter, was aboard that plane. The people's plane that we pay for. I mean, when we're talking, we recently were watching this on YouTube. The amount of money that plane costs is insane. Trump did broker a pretty good deal on it. Barack Obama had one that was already set up, and he what was it? Trump came in and said, no, just tell Boeing we don't want the planes. If it's really how much they're going to, just tell them we don't want the planes. But he brokered a pretty. I think he just said that recently at a rally as well. But anyhow, I say all of this. I'm going around the block here to go across the street. I say all of this to say that when Hunter Biden boarded that 757 or 47 that said United States of America on it, and he flew overseas, and he went to China, and there was billions of dollars worth of deals being worked out, and he walked away with some odd number of millions of dollars, that has been proven. That is a fact, okay? But that's not going to be talked about in the media. It's not going to be talked about on CNN. It's not going to be, of course not, unless they're just going to say the president's way off base saying that, and they'll briefly touch on it. But we know it to be true, and the media is so silent that the corruption is right in front of your face. I'm telling you, ladies and gentlemen, we did not vote for communism. We did not vote for socialism. We did not vote for fascism, but it is undoubtedly here. We are facing it right now. You are being silenced in social media. You are being lied to by the media. You're being lied to by everybody, all the politicians, Trump included. I'm not saying that I'm a torch carrier for everything Donald Trump. I voted for him, and I intend to vote for him again because I believe in his message. Listen, here's what I believe. I believe, much like George Bush 43, okay, that no matter how fiscally irresponsible George Bush was, and no matter how much I disagree with certain policies of George Bush, there is no doubt that George Bush loved America.
Yeah.
There is no doubt that when I laid my head down at night, I knew that if anybody were to try to bring tyranny or carnage or violence or war to the shores of the United States of America, that they would be met with superior violence and the full breadth of our military force. And he proved that. He proved that after 9/11 when he stood down there with that megaphone in an unscripted event, when he grabbed that megaphone from that firefighter atop of that rubble, and he said, "The whole world hears you. And whoever knocked these buildings down is going to hear all of us very soon." And we went in there and we kicked the shit out of these people. It cost a lot of money, and we started an endless war. These are religious wars, ladies and gentlemen. These people over there have been fighting these wars for centuries, and there is absolutely nothing that we are going to do to stop it. Our involvement, although be it very expensive and unpopular, is also, in my opinion, quite necessary. The reason we go to these shithole countries, and the reason why people like Richard Leonard sign up for the ultimate sacrifice, and the reason why people like Richard Leonard's family are on board with that, although it's very scary and nobody wants to bury their son or daughter, especially coming back in a pine box from overseas when they died in a pile of spent shell casings or were blown up by some IED or attacked in some cheap-ass ambush. The reason why we go over there and the reason why you signed up was so that we can go there rather than the fight coming to us. But ladies and gentlemen, I am telling you, we are a country divided. We are weakened. Our communication is being screwed with. We are vulnerable. We are polarized and divided on race. We are polarized and divided on politics. We are polarized and divided on basically really anything. I mean, everything is racist. We already discussed that. I mean, if I had to disagree with, well, I like green apples better than red. Well, shit, that's racist. And so what I'm saying here is that when your opponent isn't talking and when your opponent isn't agreeing, they can be easily dismantled. They're sitting ducks. We are not the real enemy. I talked about this on a short commentary that I did just recently called The Jar. And I'll just sum it up quickly. If you take about 100 red ants, those fire ants that you find in the southwestern desert, and you throw them in a jar and combine them with about 100 of those black ants, and you put them all in there together, nothing really will happen, not really, until you shake the jar vigorously and you dump it onto the ground. The red ants and the black ants will fight each other. They'll bite, they'll sting, they'll fight to the death. They'll absolutely desecrate each other. They'll destroy each other because the black ants will think the red ants are the enemy, and the red will think the black are the enemy. All the while, none of those ants, all of those ants put together, will ever realize that the real enemy is he who shook the jar. And that is what is going on in the United States. The jar, ladies and gentlemen, is the media, and they're lying to you. We quickly have time for a little bit of this corruption exchange.
Just out of curiosity, the mayor of Moscow's wife gave your son $3.5 million. What did he do to deserve it? What did he do with Burisma to deserve $183,000?
None of that is true. Let him answer.
None
of that is true.
Oh, really? He didn't get $3.5 million?
Mr. President,
Mr.
President, please.
Totally discredited. Totally discredited. And by the way,
well, wait, he didn't get $3.5 million, Joe?
Mr. Vice,
he got $3.5 million.
That is not true.
Oh, really?
Mr. President, it's an open discussion, please.
It's a fact.
Well,
let him discuss,
an issue. Let the Vice President answer.
Discredited.
Did Burisma pay him $183,000 a month with no experience in energy?
Mr. President,
my son did nothing wrong at Burisma.
I think he did.
Mr. President, let him answer.
So let me ask you this, Joe.
No, go ahead, Mr. I'm listening to you.
You got $3.5 million from Moscow.
He testified under oath in his administration, said, I did my job and I did it very well.
Oh,
I
really?
did it
I'd
honorably.
like to know who they are.
Well, I'll give you the list of the people who testified.
No, go ahead, sir.
Sure, you've already fired most of them because they did a good job.
Some people don't do a good job. With you,
go ahead. Wait a minute. You get the final word, Mr.
Well, it's hard to get any word in with this clown.
Excuse me. Did this guy just call the President of the United States a clown on a national stage? What country are we living in where we have such a... It doesn't really matter if you like Donald J. Trump. It doesn't matter if you voted for Donald Trump. He is the President of the United States. There is a respect that is to be had for the office itself. There is a level of respect that should happen on the streets for police officers that is gone. Kids no longer have respect for authority in the classroom, for teachers. It is gone. Kids will stand on a football field and argue with their football coach or walk off the field and protest. The respect is gone. And this starts at home. The lack of involvement by parents, in my opinion, is because of this shit. And for those of you that are listening on the radio, on iHeartRadio, Mojo 50, I'm holding up my cell phone. I'm holding up my little mini computer, my iPhone, the information superhighway, readily available at my fingertips, where I can watch TikTok videos, I can watch YouTube, I can watch breaking news. Anything that I want to know, I get immediate, instant gratification, which has created a sense of entitlement. It's created a crave for information, a longing, a loathing, a craving need for information. And if the desire is not met immediately, if I don't get what I want and I don't get it right now, there's going to be problems. In the second half of today's show, we're going to talk to Lindsay Ferris-Martin. She is a social media expert, and she's going to talk to us more about those things. We will also get into, as we immediately come back, there was an exchange on the transformation of power that I really want to get into as well last night at the debate. Patriotically Correct Radio. My name is Stu Peters. That's Richard. This segment brought to you by Johnson Jewelers. We're going to hear more about them in just a minute. Also, USCCA, make sure to get over to their website. Use the promo code MOJO50 for your chance at a vacation and at your shot at a brand new Kimbra Custom that they're giving away over there, USCCA. More PC Radio straight ahead. Don't go anywhere.
We will force votes. We will not stop. Any Republican senator is part of the cover-up. What the f***?
Impeachment.
This is madness.
The PC Radio Show with Stu and Rich. Back in a minute.
Hey, it's Stu Peters for Johnson Jewelers, located in Woodbury, Minnesota, but more importantly, located online worldwide at johnsonjewelers.com. Why is that important to you? Well, because if you have been left behind or you have discovered a family heirloom or something that's important to you, maybe it's grandma's birthstone, or maybe it's a pendant or a family crest, maybe it's grandpa's ring, but it doesn't quite fit you, or maybe it needs to be restored, or you see something completely different in mind. Why shove that thing in a safety deposit box? Why put it aside or put it in a shadow box or just break it out every once in a while to show the grandkids? Instead, you could wear that with a custom piece of jewelry designed for you, specifically by johnsonjewelers.com. A quick visit to the website, a couple of emails exchanged, and maybe a few phone calls, and you will have that custom piece of jewelry that means something for you. Visit them online, worldwide, johnsonjewelers.com, johnsonjewelers.com. That's johnsonjewelers.com.
Prop 25 ends our right to put up bail for anyone, even though they may have been racially profiled. Prop 25 replaces bail with computer algorithms. Academic studies show that these algorithms are biased. Some call them black boxes. And Prop 25's new bureaucracy delays justice for innocent people stuck in jail. The NAACP asks you to vote no on Proposition 25.
Hey, it's Stu Peters and Richard Leonard for Adjust Today Chiropractic. Now, I want you to take a look at this. This is the website for Adjust Today Chiropractic, which obviously is at adjusttodaychiropractic.com. Dr. Dustin Ducart says you're in good hands. He believes everyone has a chance to experience the benefits of chiropractic care. He'd love to find out how to skillfully take care of you and your spine, and that can be done even on Saturdays. He makes himself available on Saturdays. And Richard, you know how important it is to be properly aligned.
Absolutely.
I mean, it's no secret that proper alignment is good for you, not only in just an everyday health aspect, but also, I mean, it can help things that you don't even know that it helps. Now, Dr. Dustin Ducart does specialize in like athletic pain and things like that, but also, I mean, chiropractic care can help with allergies, migraines, all kinds of stuff. Visit him today, adjusttodaychiropractic.com, adjusttodaychiropractic.com. That's adjusttodaychiropractic.com.
Patriotically correct. Politically biased. Emotionally disturbed. On behalf of all of us at Mojo, we apologize. Stewart's and Richard. PC Radio.
Welcome back to the second segment of this glorious afternoon on the Patriotically Correct Radio Show, welcoming in almost 1 million listeners on iHeartRadio. Mojo 50 is the station if you're looking, and you got to find us live 4 p.m. Central, Monday through Friday, right here, Mojo 50. Also, make sure that you get over and download the OpsLens app. We're going to talk social media here in just a minute with Lindsay Ferris-Martin. She is our social media consultant and expert, also a Patriotically Correct Radio contributor. This half of PC Radio brought to you by American Pride Roasters Coffee. American Pride Roasters Coffee, AmericanPrideRoastersCoffee.com. Make sure that you get over there. It's all that we drink. We fill our cups with it. It is the only coffee that is guaranteed to make you swallow. Brad's Brown Bag, although a stupid name, a very good cup of coffee. Also, Ron's Sexual Chocolate. I like that. Izzo has his Rage Blend. Screw that. We all know why. He unfriended me on Facebook, bro. I mean, that's just ridiculous.
Childish.
Very childish. Anyway, there's some things that we didn't get to in the... just hold that, Richard. Let's not even glorify this with a conversation. Some things that we didn't get to, and probably some of the most important conversation in last night's debate was regarding the transition of power and whether or not the candidates would accept the results of the election. Here's Joe Biden when asked about that.
Prepared to let people vote. They should go to iwillvote.com. Decide how they're going to vote, when they're going to vote, and what means by which they're going to vote. The fact is that there are going to be millions of people because of COVID that are going to be voting by mail-in ballots. We're going to make sure that those people who want to vote in person are able to vote because enough poll watchers are there to make sure they can socially distance. And this is all about trying to dissuade people from voting because he's trying to scare people into thinking that it's not going to be legitimate. If you're able to vote early in your state, vote early because he cannot stop you from being able to determine the outcome of this election.
All right. So he's framing this as an intimidation attempt or voter suppression by the highest office in the land, the President of the United States himself, getting involved with this and telling people not to vote or suppressing the vote or making people fearful of going to vote. Richard, to that you say what?
I think that it's all bullshit, to be honest with you. I think that a few people screwed up for everybody. So now what should happen is that there is no mail-in vote. There is no absentee balloting. If you are not going to be in the country because you're going on vacation on election day, then yeah, go ahead and vote early, but you need to go somewhere, show an ID, proof of residency or whatever, cast your vote and go about your day.
I'm a proponent of
the only people that should be allowed to vote by mail or absentee are soldiers that are serving outside of our borders.
There you go. I was going to just say that. I'm a proponent of the military absentee vote. These people absolutely have earned the right to vote, and then they cannot choose where they are. I would also talk about maybe quadriplegics, handicapped people, people that have the coronavirus, virus, as my son would say, the plague, the China plague, as the president would say. Here is President Trump on this transition of power and the election.
So when I listened to Joe talking about a transition, there's been no transition from when I won. I won that election. And if you look at crooked Hillary Clinton, if you look at all of the different people, there was no transition because they came after me trying to do a coup. They came after me spying on my campaign. They started from the day I won and even before I won, from the day I came down the escalator with our First Lady. They were a disaster. They were a disgrace to our country. And we've caught them. We've caught them all. We've got it all on tape. We've caught them all. And by the way, you gave the idea for the Logan Act against General Flynn. You better take a look at that because we caught you in a sense. And President Obama was sitting in the office. He knew about it, too. So don't tell me about a free transition. As far as the ballots are concerned, it's a disaster. A solicited ballot. Okay, solicited is okay. You're soliciting, you're asking, they send it back, you send it back. I did that. If you have an unsolicited, they're sending millions of ballots all over the country. There's fraud. They found them in creeks. They found some with the name Trump, just happened to have the name Trump just the other day in a waste paper basket. They're being sent all over the place. They sent 2 in a Democrat area. They sent out 1,000 ballots. Everybody got 2 ballots. This is going to be a fraud like you've never seen. The other thing, it's nice on November 3rd, you're watching and you see who won the election. And I think we're going to do well because people are really happy with the job we've done. But you know what? We won't know. We might not know for months because these ballots are going to be all over. Take a look at what happened in Manhattan. Take a look at what happened in New Jersey. Take a look at what happened in Virginia and other places. They're not losing 2%, 1%, which, by the way, is too much. An election could be won or lost with that. They're losing 30 and 40%. It's a fraud, and it's a shame. And can you imagine where they say you have to have your ballot in by November 10th? November 10th. That means that's 7 days after the election in theory.
Yeah. So he's talking about they've already found ballots with the name Trump on them in waste paper baskets at the bottom of creeks. People are getting sent 2 ballots. We know here in the state of Minnesota that we have cash for ballots going on in Ilhan Omar's district. That was caught on tape in a drop by Project Veritas. The media is completely dark on this, a complete media blackout on this. And they're supporting this vote by mail for one reason and one reason only. It's because they're in the tank for liberal progressives. Same thing with social media. You've noticed, and we've talked about the fact that you can only send messages to 5 people now. There are new community standards coming out tomorrow, Richard. Tomorrow on Facebook. We don't know exactly what they're going to be because they won't tell us. We have not heard. But we do have a social media expert and a social media consultant, Lindsay Ferris-Martin, who is a PC Radio contributor, and she joins us now to speculate on what that might look like. Lindsay, welcome to PC Radio. It's great to have you on this afternoon.
Good afternoon, gentlemen.
Hello. So, no secret here that Facebook quietly made this move to limit the amount of people that you can talk to through Messenger. So we're not going to tell you that you can't say something. We're only going to allow you to say it to 5 people at a time. New community standards coming out tomorrow. Is this something that a specific group of people should be concerned about or looking at more closely, Lindsay?
It really should, but let's look at the reason why it's happening, right? So Facebook is currently being sued by Australia for $529 billion, 5 times what the company brought in last year. And Facebook has been trying to move to being, quote unquote, a legitimate platform for real media and not just a social site. So with that being said, they want to go, in their opinion, remove content that is maybe not authentic, that violates any sort of safety, including expression that may threaten people or has the potential to intimidate, exclude, or silence anyone, anything that goes against privacy, protecting personal privacy, and dignity, the respect and dignity of others that may degrade or harass other people, or anything that is deemed objectionable content. Those are all part of their new community standards that are under the umbrella of what they're trying to move to, right? And it stems from this lawsuit that happened because Australia is holding Facebook responsible for what the users are pushing out as far as content and not being authentic or legitimate.
Well, since when do you have to be authentic to be on Facebook? I think that it's okay. I don't disagree with their stance. What I disagree with is that it doesn't seem to be fair for 100% of their users. If they're going to switch to a media outlet, then it needs to be the same across the board, and everybody will find another place to post their bullshit and what they had for dinner and all that other crap.
Right. And I think, honestly, their move to become a legitimate media platform is absolutely ridiculous. Let's keep in mind why Facebook started. It was the digital version of passing the hot girl a note in college, right? Mm-hmm. That's what Facebook was. And it is a place for people, it was a place for college students to post about what they did over the weekend and how they partied and whatever else. That's what this platform was intended for. And now they want to shift to being legitimate, news. And I think that might just be a cover to restrict freedoms. I do believe a lot of it is fearful that they're going to get hit with lawsuits left and right. In different countries and even here in the U.S., they've had to deal with their fair share of government issues. But instead of blocking and restricting, what I would like to see them do is lobby for new amendments for freedom of speech in digital platforms or whatever that might look like. And what's interesting about their move to enhance and protect their community standards and what is being blocked and what is not, what goes in huge violation of authenticity, safety, privacy, dignity, and objectable content are videos of people in their last moments. We saw that with George Floyd and with these officer-involved shootings, where people are dying in front of the camera. Privacy is being violated for the person who is in their last moments. Dignity is being lost for those people as well. And yet, if you try to discuss your political views, that's what's offensive.
Joining us on the phone right now is Lindsay Ferris Martin. She is a Patriotically Correct radio contributor. She is an expert and social media consultant. We're talking about some pretty serious stuff here. I mean, you're right. People dying on a social media platform that carries as many people being shot by the police, dying of any other cause. Like you said, George Floyd, you used as an example. It was all over social media. Should people, you alluded a little bit to, them being a media outlet. A media outlet would be supposedly objective. It's no secret that when I post something that's conservative leaning, I'm a lot more apt to be quote unquote fact checked by independent fact checkers. And they use terms like mostly inaccurate or likely inaccurate or partially something or other, partially false. Why is it that they're able to get away with this? And am I wrong in my observation just because of my position that I'm emotionally invested in it? Or do you see this happening on the other side equally?
No, you are absolutely right in feeling that. And because that goes back to the objectable content part, where people are going in and if they don't agree with you and they find that your content is offensive and they mark it as spam or they want to hide it from their feed or they unfollow you or whatever they do to your post, is sending that message to Facebook saying that you're putting content out there that's harmful to the public, right? Or maybe inaccurate. That's based ridiculous. On what some of your followers or people who come across your content are seeing, right? So it stems from them starting to object, and then also, Facebook kind of flagging things. Well, this might be offensive to somebody, and we don't know that it is 100% factual. Oddly enough, with Facebook trying to move to being a legitimate real media platform, it's interesting. The most at risk for these new community standards and violating these community standards are news media platforms, especially more independent and new ones like yourselves, right? Mm-hmm. Where it is actually recommended to avoid political posts.
Right, yeah.
Or it was even described to not share posts that you would not share during a dinner party. That's like everything.
Well, wait a minute now. Hold on a second, Lindsay. Isn't Facebook? So like you said, Facebook started as a way for me to pass the hot girl in my biology class a note and talk about the kegger I went to this weekend. And now all of a sudden, we're going to be limited on a platform that was supposed to be, hey, talk about what you want to talk about. And now we're going to be limited on our posts depending on what Facebook sees fit. And because somebody else might be offended, that's bullshit. I don't care if you're offended. Unfriend me, block my page, whatever the hell you need to do so that you can see the crying baby or the laughing babies and the flowers that you want to see. I just think it's ridiculous.
I absolutely agree. And that's the problem, though, is that once people like a page or start to follow a page, rarely do they ever unfollow it. They would rather complain. But that's today's society in general.
Well, I like hearing that. Yeah. I mean, I'm glad that nobody's going to unfollow us. I think a lot of times people tune into our show just to say, let's see what these assholes are going to say next, which is fine with me, because if we have 100 people that like us and we have 10,000 that hate us, we're going to be pretty successful. I mean, bad news travels faster than anything else. My question to follow up on the Facebook deal is, do you think platforms like Twitter and Instagram are going to follow suit with this?
100%. And like I said, it's because of the lawsuit that these companies and these platforms are facing, right? That's what is stemming all of this and restricting. And now we're going to be a little bit more, conservative, but I don't mean that in a good sense. I mean prudish, right? We don't want offensive content going out. It needs to be fact-checked and all that other stuff. And I think that, yes, Twitter, we're already seeing it on Twitter, right?
Yeah, I mean, they're fact-checking the president.
Instagram is owned by Facebook. So we're likely going to see that across the board. It's probably going to be a little bit more strict for a little bit until they figure out which direction they're truly going to go, or if they decide to start lobbying for a real change with these platforms.
So let me ask you a question. And please forgive my ignorance. I'm not a very smart man when it comes to this stuff. I'm an infantryman, right? I shoot, move, and communicate. But it seems to me that if they're facing all these lawsuits and people are so offended. Wouldn't there be some kind of disclaimer that when you log in or you sign up to have a Facebook page, that you might be offended, you might see some things that you don't want to see.
Right.
If you don't agree with that, then exit now. Or if you're all right with that, knowing that you have the ability to block my page because you don't like what I have to say, wouldn't that take care of all that? Because everybody's been duly warned.
Yeah, it's like when you go to Chatterbait.
What?
Right, exactly. So you do get those disclaimers and you do kind of agree to those things up front, but you also are agreeing when you log into and create a Facebook account that you are also not going to violate those things as well, right? But people in Facebook's mind are. And because those violations are happening despite the agreement up front from the user, the responsibility then falls back onto Facebook. And because our government is run by a bunch of old phobies that really don't understand social media, and we know that because I don't know how many years ago it was where Mark Zuckerberg was in front of Congress trying to explain to these old people on how to even leverage their mobile device and how to turn it on. It was a mess. Our government doesn't understand the platform. The people who are trying to run the legality side or enforce rules or what have you don't understand the platform and how it's being used. And so it's easier just to go and sue the company itself.
So you mean that you're telling me that there are government officials, elected representatives that were sent to office, whether it be at local, county, state, or federal, that aren't experts on everything? They don't know how to do. They can't tell me how to do everything.
Well, they're definitely not experts on communication, and we all know that.
An example I was just looking back because I knew that there was one recently here on the Patriotically Correct radio page on Facebook. I posted a picture of a guy, and he's holding up a sign that says, Timothy McVeigh attacked a federal building and was federally executed. Okay. In the next picture below it, it says Antifa and BLM attack federal buildings and Democrats cheer them on. Okay, this is fact. I mean, Timothy McVeigh attacked the federal building, right? He did. That's a fact. Check. Okay. Timothy McVeigh was federally executed. That's a fact, right? Check. Okay. Antifa and BLM attack federal buildings, right? That's a fact. Okay. Check. And Democrats cheer them on. We have multiple sound bites that I could go through here if we had the time of people like Nancy Pelosi saying this is going to continue. People like the vice presidential nominee, Kamala Harris, saying, we know why they're doing it and expect this to continue. This is anarchy. We even have people, why wasn't, what's his name, Jerry Nadler fact-checked when he said what was going on in Portland was just a myth. Okay, so the way that Facebook handled this particular one is they said partly false information. The same information was checked in another post by independent fact-checkers. So the fact-check, 1995 Oklahoma City bombing is not comparable to damage in unrest since the death of George Floyd.
Oh, really?
Yeah. What do you mean? It's damage to a federal building. Excuse me.
Right.
How is that not comparable? It's a federal building, and it was damaged. The difference here is that it matters who's the perpetrator of the crime. It matters who they want to paint in a good light. And the fact of the matter is that Antifa is now an organization that not only does the former vice president and presidential nominee Joe Biden back them, he won't condemn them. He says they're not a bad group. They're just an idea. Excuse me? They're burning down federal buildings. They're starting shit on fire. They are a bad group. They're intimidating and they're committing felony crimes out here. But the media, along with social media, is going to block us from saying this. You say that Twitter's to follow, Instagram, other than Parler, where it's just a big echo chamber for people like you and I to talk. What is the alternative here? How can people fight back against this? Or is this just something that we're just going to have to accept?
You know, I think it's going to be a long road ahead of us, right? It's not just going to be one answer. And really, it has to be the users who really start to either stop using Facebook, which won't happen because people's lives are on there,
right?
And for almost like decades, right? Or a decade about. So it's going to be up to the users, first and foremost, to really advocate that they want this platform to continue running the way that it was intended. We also need these businesses, Facebook and Twitter, to start lobbying for different rules and regulations that apply specifically to social media that maybe may protect them from potential lawsuits, right? such as the one that they're facing in Australia, but also that allows free speech and people to live their lives. Facebook and social media platforms are an extension of the way people live their lives, and people live their lives unedited. And if you're going to start saying that we're going to protect people's privacy and dignity, you've got to be real careful about that, because it's all in the eye of the beholder and what people find offensive and what people are willing to share with other people and what's being shared without other people's knowledge too.
Yeah, well, I mean, I don't know. I guess I can see what you're saying. I can also see a little bit of the other side, although I disagree with it. And to be quite honest with you, I think that we all got along just fine when Facebook wasn't here. And I think that the fact of the matter is
that's because we have MySpace.
Yeah, well, but it's here, right? And it's not going to go anywhere. And like you said, Lindsay, people have their whole lives on there. They have their whole kid's childhood and pictures and videos on their Facebook pages. But I mean, it's this whole idea that I might offend somebody. I don't give two shits if you're offended by what I have to say. I'm sorry. So go somewhere else. Go somewhere else and look at it.
Nowhere in the Constitution does it say, you have the right to not be offended.
Right.
Okay? And that's gay.
Exactly. And what we are seeing, though, right now,
to
touch on the other question earlier, is that there are new platforms that are starting to pop up now that, like Parler, for example, that really do say, we have no restrictions here. This is a free-for-all. Like, do you say what you want. If you're going to be offended, you're going to be offended. But we don't have restrictions.
Yeah.
So these new platforms are starting to pop up. However, is it only a matter of time before they start to add restrictions as well, because they are going to likely face the same types of lawsuits that Facebook is.
Well, in Parler's case, Dan Bongino is one of the founders or one of the primary investors or one of the, I don't know. But if we're going to talk about offensive stuff, there's no way that Bongino is going to say we're going to censor anything. I know that for a fact. He doesn't care. Former Secret Service agent, former cop, and the host of the Bongino Show. And he's, I just don't see that happening. The problem that I have is that somebody like that's borderline or a moderate Democrat, or there is such a thing as sane Democrats. They're out there. Sound-minded people, especially people that are a little bit older, like my parents' age, or maybe just even between myself and my parents, there are some really good Democrats. But they're going to be intimidated by a platform like Parler, because Parler is really advertising itself as the conservative social media platform, which to me really limits Parler. Because if you're going to push away a certain group of people, then how can we get back to the days where we could have a discussion about something and not start yelling and screaming? When can we get back to the days where I don't just get up and walk away because I don't like what you said, or I say something offensive, or I call you a name, or I tell you that you're racist or a bigot or a misogynist or a sexist or a xenophobic asshole? When can we get back to the days where people's feelings didn't really matter? Because you know what? It's your job to go deal with your feelings on your own. And if you're having a hard time dealing with your feelings on your own, then certainly you can go see somebody. There are plenty of mental health professionals out there to assist you with that. Richard knows that. He goes and sees somebody. I know that because I go and see somebody. It's the responsible thing to do. The fact of the matter is, and I'm going to go off on a tangent here about that thing in particular, everybody on this planet has a mental health issue that they're dealing with, whether it's something that's diagnosable or not. And I learned this when I got certified as a member of the Minneapolis Crisis, or the Minnesota State Crisis Intervention Team, to deal with emotionally disturbed persons and persons in crisis. The first thing that Steve Wickelgren said at the Minneapolis Police Department Strategic Operations Center when we were in that classroom with a bunch of cops was this: raise your hand if you have a mental health issue. Do you think anybody raised their hand? Of course not.
A few, maybe.
No,
nobody did. Everybody looked around at each other, afraid to raise their hand because these are cops. They're cops. They can't admit that. They're ironclad, right? They're superheroes. They can't admit that. And admittedly, I didn't raise my hand either because I feel the same way about myself. I mean, there's nobody that's ever been put on this planet that's been greater at anything than me. So why in the hell would I ever admit that I have some sort of a mental health issue? I don't, because that would be admitting that there is a weakness in you, like the president admitting that he had COVID. He'll never admit it, although we know that he had the coronavirus. I know that because I've heard it from inside sources at the government. But that's a matter of national security. And of course, the president's president's never going to come out or anybody from his communication staff and say that he has it. The fact is this. We are all dealing with mental health issues. We all have a weakness in something certain. Last night, Richard and I arrested a guy whose wife killed herself. His son killed himself. His brother died in his arms. And he, like 3 others, too. He had like 6 deaths in the last year. The guy's dealing with serious depression. He's probably suicidal. He's addicted to methamphetamine and heroin and whatever else. And, he's burglarizing people and raping people. I don't know, whatever the hell he's doing. But listen, the fact of the matter is there's people like that out there that are dealing with mental health issues. And he's dealing with weaknesses. Everybody's got some stuff that's going on in their life. And Facebook and Twitter are supposed to be, kind of, in a roundabout way, a place where people can sit down at their keyboard or on their smartphone and talk about those things openly and freely. There are groups that you can join. For example, I'm part of one, Parents of ADHD Children. Okay, my oldest kid has ADHD. There's some things that we don't really know about. So we go to groups like that to find support in that. There are also different groups for conservatives. I belong to the Minnesota Conservatives and the Woodbury Conservatives. Shout out to those guys. I don't join groups like liberal assholes with chip on shoulder who vow to be angry and deceptive all day. You know why? Because I don't want to be a part of that shit. So why can't we just get to a point where people can decide what it is that they want to do without this nanny state approach of exactly you do as we say because we know what's better for you, little taxpayer. You just go to sit down over there and shut up. And if it's not bad enough that the government is doing it, now Zuckerberg is doing it. Lindsay, we got about a minute left. Your final words.
To answer your question is how do we get back from a place where people aren't easily offended by everything and that we don't need to be micromanaged by the government and everybody else is the moment we stop giving out participation trophies.
Yes.
And we start treating people and our children with respect and say, guess what? Your talent isn't here, but it might be here. When we start redirecting our children and instead of trying to shelter them from every little thing that might hurt their feelings, we might have an opportunity to go back to the dynamic of not being easily offended and being able to put on your big girl pants and big boy pants and carry on with your life.
Lindsay Ferris
Girl's
Martin.
Preaching today, boy.
Social media expert, consultant, PC radio contributor, and today, our mental health professional. Thank you very much for being here. Can't wait to have you back on next time. Richard, it is going on 5 o'clock. Your final words.
I agree with Lindsay. Quit sheltering your children. You're raising a bunch of pussies. Let them get out and be themselves, fail, pick themselves up, and go on to something else.
As proven by the formation of Antifa, the new ISIS for pussies. Last night's debate, by the way, although be it great entertainment, will change nobody's mind. Big waste of time for everybody involved. There will be 2 more of them. I will grab my popcorn and I will watch as well. Until tomorrow at 4 o'clock, here's what's up to it. Here's what's down to it. Here's to any way you can get to it. Here's to those that don't do it, maybe dragged to it, tied to it, or forced to it. And here's to us who do it, because we're the ones that's used to it. Remember to fly low and avoid that radar. One day they're going to come for the car, and when they do, save the radio! See you tomorrow.
Get to know them, grow to love them, love to hate them. Stewie and Richie, PC Radio.